Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been looking through all the material you sent on, well, this incredible wave of youth uprisings in 2024-2025.
Yeah, Kenya, Nepal, Indonesia, Madagascar, Morocco, Peru, the Philippines.
Yeah,
It's quite a list.
exactly. And these are leaderless movements, digital natives achieving really significant political shifts.
Absolutely monumental. Prime ministers resigning, governments being dissolved, major laws like Kenya's finance bill just withdrawn.
So we see the results. We have the data on these huge wins. But the mission for us today is figuring out how. What's the secret sauce here? We need to get beyond just saying, oh, with social media coordination, that's too vague. It doesn't really tell us anything useful.
Yeah, and it doesn't explain the mechanism.
Yeah.
We need the specifics. How did these scattered, decentralized groups manage to synchronize thousands of individual actions?
And turn them into this unified political force that actually achieved things.
Yeah, and we really need to define this mechanism because the human cost was significant.
Yeah.
You mentioned 60 deaths in Kenya, 70 in Nepal. Yeah. These weren't just small protests. They were moments of deep political rupture, digital actions having very real, very physical consequences.
The fact that groups with no formal leaders could force these kinds of concessions, it just demands a new way of thinking about how coordination happens now.
It really does.
And the material you shared, it points towards this concept. It's built on some deeper theory, but applied in a radically new way. Metamarks.
Metamarks.
Okay, so let's unpack that. It comes from something called Stigmergy Network Theory.
Yeah, Stigmergy, it might sound a bit academic, but the basic idea is pretty simple, actually.
Okay, break it down for us.
Think about ants, like a line of ants carrying food back to the nest. There's no ant general directing traffic, right?
Right, no boss ant.
The first ant leaves a little chemical trail, a pheromone. It changes the environment just slightly.
Okay.
The next ant comes along, senses that modified environment, that trail, and follows it. And in doing so, it reinforces the trail for the next ant.
Ah, so the environment itself is sort of leaving instructions.
Exactly. The environment is the instruction manual. No central command needed.
I like that analogy. So metamarks, in our context of these uprisings, are like those pheromones.
Precisely. They're the digital traces, or sometimes even physical ones, the modifications left in the environment that trigger these autonomous, reproducible actions.
They're the signals, the evidence of change that tells the next person what to do or inspires them to act.
Yes. And based on this Stigmergy idea, these autonomous actions become reproducible and scalable because they have three key features.
Okay, what are they?
First is autonomy. The action isn't ordered from above, it comes from personal conviction.
Like Darnella Frazier filming George Floyd's murder. Nobody told her to do that. She just did it.
Exactly. Or remember when Chinese citizens started archiving COVID news on GitHub because the state censors were deleting it? That was autonomous action.
Right, driven by individuals.
And the power there is resilience.
Yeah.
You don't need to coordinate the motivation. The motivation is internal. You just need to trace the metamark to exist for others to see.
Okay, autonomy. What's second?
Second is reproducibility. The trace, the action, it has to be documented somehow, and it has to be something others can copy or adapt.
Ah, so this is how tactics spread, like the Be Water strategy from Hong Kong protests. That fluid movement, avoiding direct confrontation, activists documented it, shared it. That documentation became an environmental modification, a metamark, that activists in Manila or Jakarta could then find, understand, and reproduce, maybe tweaking it for their own situation. It's knowledge transfer, but massively scaled up and decentralized.
Got it. Autonomy, reproducibility, what's the third one?
Scalability. And this is why these things can be so powerful and, frankly, terrifying for established regimes.
How so?
Because a seemingly simple act can amplify exponentially across the network. One person posts a powerful video or shares a striking image.
And suddenly that's the signal for thousands, maybe millions of dispersed individuals to react or join in.
Exactly. One person hits share and you potentially mobilize a decentralized army almost overnight. Wow. Okay, so metamarks aren't just passive content floating around. They're actively shaping decisions, driving action.
Yes, they're environmental changes that guide subsequent behavior.
So what types of these environmental traces, these metamarks, were actually driving the movements we're looking at? Our analysis suggests three main kinds, functionally speaking.
Right. Let's start with what we can call documentary metamarks. These are really interesting because they work by creating cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance, like mental discomfort.
Sort of. They introduce a stimulus, often visual, that just makes abstract inequality or injustice suddenly very concrete and hard to ignore. It forces you to react, mentally or physically.
Okay, give us an example.
The standout example from the sources comes from Nepal. It wasn't some long policy critique that kicked things off. It was a single Instagram photo.
Just one photo.
Posted by a user named Sogat Tapa. It showed a Christmas tree, but instead of ornaments, it was built entirely out of empty boxes from high-end luxury brands. Louis Vuitton, Gucci, you name it.
Wow, okay. Just a tree made of fancy boxes.
That's it. But that trace, that image, created this powerful contradiction. Christmas symbols, usually about, humility, community.
Yeah, giving, togetherness.
And juxtaposing that with this blatant display of elite wealth, these luxury status symbols. People knew there was inequality, but seeing it like that, it made the contradiction visceral. Painful, even.
And that visual punch is the documentary Metamark.
Exactly. And then you see the coordination kick in recursively. That one photo sparked a whole wave of derivative metamarks.
Like what?
Memes using the image, satirical videos riffing on it, compilations showing other examples of elite excess. Each new piece of content modified the digital environment further.
Compounding the outrage, coordinating that feeling.
All without needing a single meeting or a designated leader telling people what to think or share. It just snowballed.
Okay, so documentary metamarks show the uncomfortable truth. What's next?
Next up. Symbolic metamarks. If documentary ones reveal the problem, symbolic ones offer a shared banner to rally under.
So these are more intentional.
Often, yes. They involve intentionally modifying the environment with images or symbols that are packed with meaning.
And the example from late 2024, early 2025 that jumped out was kind of wild, the Jolly Roger flag.
Specifically the one from the Japanese manga series One Piece. The skull and crossbones with the straw hat.
It seems almost absurd, right? A cartoon pirate flag fueling anti-corruption movements across Asia.
It does sound strange on the surface, but think about why it works so well in places like Indonesia, Nepal, the Philippines.
Okay, why?
First, it's visual. It instantly transcends language barriers. Explaining complex policy demands in Nepali, Tagalog, and Bahasa Indonesia is hard. Showing a flag, everyone gets it.
Okay, visual recognition makes sense.
Second, ideological flexibility. This is key. In one country, maybe that flag meant pure aggression, like we're fighting back.
Okay.
In another, it was specifically anti-corruption. In a third, maybe it represented broader constitutional reform. The point is, the symbol was broad enough.
So people could rally around the general idea of resistance or change without needing to agree on every single detail of the platform.
Precisely. It allows alignment around resistance's value, rather than getting bogged down in doctrinal specifics early on.
That's clever. And the third reason?
Low barrier to reproduction. It's easy to draw, easy to print off, easy to digitally insert into images or videos.
So anyone could participate in spreading the symbol, modifying both physical streets and digital feeds, reinforcing the message everywhere.
Exactly. Widespread environmental modification reinforcing itself.
Okay, so we have documentary showing the truth, symbolic providing a banner. What's the third type?
The third type is tactical metamarks. These go beyond just feelings or symbols. These traces actually act as repositories for strategic knowledge.
Like how-to guides for protest.
Essentially, yes. Think about hashtags like #MilkTeaAlliance or #Seedlings. They weren't just for solidarity, though they did boost morale. Yeah. They functioned like digital filing cabinets. People shared practical tips, how to organize a flash mob safely, what police formations looked like in certain cities, which arguments were resonating most effectively against government propaganda.
So, strategic know-how embedded in the digital environment.
And crucially, the sources emphasized this wasn't just blind copying. It spurred adaptation.
Like the Hong Kong bee water example again.
Right. Thai protesters saw the documentation, the metamarks about bee water, but they didn't replicate it exactly. They adapted those ideas to the specific streets, the police tactics, the political context of Bangkok.
So the metamark provides the inspiration or the core idea, but users interpret and modify it.
Exactly. Interpretation and adaptation, not just imitation. And maybe the most radical example of this tactical potential was in Nepal.
What happened there?
With the Youths Against Corruption movement. They used a Discord channel, essentially a shared digital environment, with over 7,500 participants.
Okay, a big group chat.
More than a chat. They used it to hold a digital vote to select Sushila Karki, a former Chief Justice, as a potential interim leader candidate.
They held a vote in Discord.
Yes. Think about that. It's not just coordinating protest against something. It's using the modified environment, the aggregated signals within that discord, to achieve emergent consensus for something. It's like distributed decision-making through these traces.
That's a significant step beyond just organizing a street protest.
It really is. It shows the incredible coordination capacity these metamarks can enable, forcing huge concessions.
And this is the big question that comes through loud and clear from the sources. If metamarks are so good at disruption, why do they seem to struggle so much with construction?
Ah, yes. The core tension.
They win the battle, get the PM to resign, scrap the bill, but then seem to find it hard to win the longer war for stable institutional change. The energy dissipates.
Exactly. And the analysis points to 4 pretty significant vulnerabilities or flaws in this metamark-driven coordination model.
Okay, let's walk through them. What's the first big problem?
The first one stems from the platforms themselves. Algorithmic distortion.
Meaning the TikToks and Instagrams of the world.
Right. These platforms aren't neutral spaces. They weren't designed for political deliberation or governance. They were designed for commercial engagement.
To keep you scrolling, keep you clicking, maximize attention.
Precisely. Their underlying logic is commercial, not political. And that creates a conflict.
How does that distort things?
Well, the algorithms that decide what you see, they filter the metamarks. But they filter based on what's likely to get the most reaction, the most engagement, not what's strategically best for the movement's long-term goals.
Ah, so outrage gets amplified over strategy.
Often, yes. We saw that example where TikTok heavily promoted Aditya's Nepo Kids videos, apparently got 135,000 views in just 24 hours.
Was that strategically the best message? Maybe, maybe not. But it clearly provoked a strong emotional reaction.
Exactly. The algorithm picks the fire starter over the blueprint. This creates this kind of selection pressure. Metamarks that trigger immediate, high-intensity emotions tend to outperform the more complex, maybe boring traces needed for long-term strategy or building institutions.
So the coordination itself gets optimized for maintaining outrage rather than building something sustainable.
That's the danger, yes. Coordination gets skewed towards engagement metrics, not governance outcomes.
Okay, algorithmic distortion. What's vulnerability number 2?
Number 2 is state nullification. This is the state striking back, trying to remove the environment where metamarks operate.
Like shutting down the internet or banning platforms.
Exactly. We saw Nepal try that blanket ban on 26 platforms in September 2025. Indonesia temporarily suspended TikTok Live during protests. Afghanistan has shut down the internet entirely in the past.
Trying to erase the digital substrate, the space where the signals travel?
Yes, but here's the interesting part. The attempt to nullify often backfires. That action itself becomes a powerful new metamark. When Nepal banned those platforms, what happened? VPN adoption reportedly spiked 8,000%. People found ways around it.
Wow.
And crucially, the ban itself was interpreted by many as, see, they're trying to silence us. This is the last straw. It reinforced the opposition's narrative.
So the state's attempt to erase the environment paradoxically created maybe the most potent metamark yet clear evidence of repression.
Precisely. It unintentionally fueled the fire. But states also try physical nullification.
You mean violence?
Yes. The abductions of activists in Kenya, the tragic deaths we mentioned earlier in Kenya, Nepal, Madagascar, that violence also modifies the environment.
How does that function as a metamark?
It introduces fear. It imposes real coordination costs.
Yeah.
People become aware of surveillance. They worry about physical safety. This distorts coordination away from optimal tactics towards self-preservation.
So fear becomes its own kind of environmental signal, shaping behavior, a metamark of control used by the state.
A very effective, if brutal one.
Okay, so platform distortion, state nullification. What's the third vulnerability?
The third one is homogeneity and exclusion. Basically, metamarks work best when coordinating people who already share similar ways of understanding the world.
Similar backgrounds, maybe? Similar access to tech?
Often, yes. Think back to that luxury Christmas tree image in Nepal. Who did that resonate most strongly with? Probably urban, educated, digitally literate people.
People who recognize the luxury brands who are on Instagram, who understand that specific cultural critique.
Exactly. Which means that people in rural areas or those less connected digitally, or maybe from different cultural backgrounds, they might encounter an unmodified environment. The signal just doesn't land for them.
It doesn't trigger the same response, or any response at all.
Right. And this helps explain why, for example, Thailand's 2020 movement struggled to broaden its base and eventually fragmented. The metamarks were very Bangkok-centric. They didn't resonate enough in rural areas.
And the sources mention shifts in demands alienating people, too.
Yes. When the core messages shifted unpredictably, like from constitutional reform to suddenly pushing republicanism or using communist imagery, it confused and alienated potential supporters who'd initially signed on based on earlier metamarks.
So it creates these built-in boundaries. You can maybe synchronize a specific group very effectively, but building a truly broad national coalition capable of governing becomes much harder.
Precisely. You end up with pockets of intense coordination, but not necessarily a unified movement.
Which leads logically to the fourth and maybe the most fundamental flaw.
Yes, what the analysis calls coordination without institutionalization. This is the big one.
Okay.
Metamarks, for all their power in synchronizing action now, seem completely inadequate for the slow, difficult work of building durable institutions. Things like accountability structures, formal procedures, sustained governance authority.
They're good for tearing down, not for building up.
That seems to be the pattern. Think about that digital vote in Nepal for Sushila Karki, a fascinating moment of aggregated preference, sure.
Right, 7,500 people chiming in.
But what legitimacy or accountability did that vote have outside that specific Discord channel? How would that translate into actual governing power or policy implementation? It just evaporates.
High mobilization doesn't automatically translate to stable government.
Not at all. And we have historical parallels.
Yeah.
Look at Nepal's own 2006 revolution. It forced massive regime change, got rid of the monarchy, huge mobilization.
But what happened afterwards?
17 different governments in the following years, ongoing political instability, economic stagnation. The mobilization didn't lead to effective governance.
And there was that quote from Ryan Adhikari.
Yes, from the Accountability Lab. He observed that in the past, many protesters who successfully forced change and then entered government ended up becoming part of the system and lost their moral ground.
Why does that happen?
Well, think about the very characteristics that make metamarks work for protest. Low barriers to entry, relative anonymity, the way algorithms amplify emotion. Those are precisely the opposite of what you need to build the trust, the deliberation, the organizational depth required to actually manage a complex state. Anonymity is great for getting people onto the streets, but terrible for building accountable leadership.
So the tool that's perfect for disruption is inherently unsuited for construction.
That seems to be the core challenge.
Okay, so if we zoom out, thinking about how we analyze these movements, the sources suggest we need a bit more nuance than just metamarks good-bad.
Definitely. We need some refinements to the theory. For instance, we need to think more about temporal dynamics. Time matters.
How so?
Well, the first time someone uses a novel metamark, like that first Jolly Roger flag appearing in a protest context, it has enormous power, precisely because it's new and unexpected. It really stimulates action.
But then what happens?
Subsequent uses of the same or similar metamarks, they face rapidly diminishing returns. The environment gets saturated, the novelty wears off. It takes more and more effort to get the same effect.
Which explains why sustaining momentum is such a massive challenge for these movements. The initial spark is easy, keeping the fire burning gets harder.
It's the Achilles heel, really. And another layer is power asymmetry.
Between the protesters and the state.
Yeah. We see states getting quite good at destroying metamarks through censorship, nullification, violence. But they seem to really struggle to create their own compelling, positive metamarks.
They're good at blocking, bad at inspiring.
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
Their attempts often feel clunky, bureaucratic, or obviously like propaganda. This leads to this cycle. Disruptive protest metamarks emerge, the state counters defensively, but struggles to offer an appealing alternative vision through its own environmental modifications.
So pulling all this together, what's the takeaway for activists, for people involved in or observing these movements?
The core lesson seems pretty stark. Metamarks give movements an unprecedented ability to disrupt the status quo. Unbelievable power, really.
Right.
But they currently lack the depth, the structure, the mechanisms needed for the constructive phase that has to follow.
So what's the path forward? The sources seem to suggest a kind of hybrid model.
That's the direction things seem to be pointing. Activists need to somehow combine the power of online environmental modification, the metamarks that are so good at mobilization, with dedicated physical organizing spaces.
Real-world connections.
Yes, and building actual accountability mechanisms that don't depend on the whims of platform algorithms or the anonymity of the digital space.
Because anonymity helps people join, but it hinders building the trust needed for long-term leadership and governance.
Exactly. You need ways to bridge that gap. fuse the digital swarm with grounded, accountable structures.
So the real challenge isn't just forcing the government's hand anymore. The tech, the metamarks, seem capable of doing that now, repeatedly.
Right, forcing concessions is achievable. The truly essential challenge, the next frontier for these movements, is figuring out how to translate that incredible protest energy into effective, stable, constructive governance after the disruption.
And that leads us to the final, really provocative thought hanging over all this material, doesn't it?
It does.
Whether these movements, born in the digital environment, can actually evolve coordination mechanisms that are sophisticated enough for both phases, for the destruction of the old and the construction of the new.
Can they master both disruption and governance using these tools or adaptations of them?
That seems to be the absolute defining question for democracy in this digital age. It's the highest peak these leaderless, digitally native movements still have to figure out how to climb.